to another episode of Throwing the Back with Sean Farrell. I am Sean Farrell. God is great all the time. All the time, God is great. Jesus Christ died and he rose again. It's going to have to get into it. Okay, so obviously, Don Nelson passed away yesterday, and five-time NBA champion with the Celtics. I think it's only fitting that that I put up the throwback shirts of the two teams, one of the multiple teams that he coached, the Mavericks, and the Bucks. The Bucks were his first job. Okay, the Bucks were his first coaching job, and Bucks were one of the most consistent teams throughout the late 70s and the early 80s. I believe he took over around 1976 or 1977, somewhere around there. He took over the Bucks then, and always had them in the playoffs. One of the most steadiest teams in the 1980s. Look at that team. Look at those teams. Who did they have? Moncrief, Bob Lanier, Paul Pressey, Craig Hodges. Did I always say Bob Lanier? Marcus Johnson. Yeah, they had some talent on that team. Jack Sigma. Those were some pretty good Bucks teams. However, there were just two problems. There were two problems that the Bucks had in the 1980s. There were two main problems that the Bucks faced in the 1980s. The Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers. Those were the two teams. Those were the two teams. Those were the two problems that the Milwaukee Bucks had, and it's just unfortunate that the road to the NBA Finals in the Eastern Conference either went through Philadelphia or Boston. Okay, that was just a reality. Okay, and everybody knew during the entire decade of the 1980s, the NBA Finals in the Western Conference, you had to go through the LA Lakers. And very few teams broke through. No, the only team that broke through was Houston. They did hit it twice, 1981 and 1986, okay? Other than that, nobody else broke through. Yeah, so it's just unfortunate that the Bucks ran into the Celtics and 76ers practically every single year in the 1980s, and then he moved on to Golden State. Had a young Chris Mullin there. Eventually brought in Mitch Richmond, Tim Hardaway, Serenus Marcellonis. Run TMC. They broke that thing up way too soon, okay? They broke that thing up way too soon. Yeah, they broke that thing up way too soon. And for those of you who may not know, a couple of days after Richmond was traded to the Sacramento Kings, they played the Golden State Warriors a few days after Richmond was traded to the Kings. And this was the final score right here. Yeah. So, I see. Yeah, so I think Don Nelson made him a mistake trading Mitch Richmond. If they don't trade Mitch Richmond, maybe they're championship contenders. Maybe they challenge the Bulls in the East. But if they don't trade Mitch Richmond, I think they're right up there with Portland, Phoenix, the Lakers. They just lost Magic. Okay, So they would be right up there with Portland and Phoenix. Okay. But it's just unfortunate that Don Nelson had to break that up. Then he moved on to New York. Didn't work out too well in New York. Then he moved on to Dallas. Got a young Dirk Nowitzki. Made a trade for Steve Nash, and bingo. There you go. They also had Michael Finley, Sean Bradley. Yeah. So and then he went back to Golden State. Led that 2007 playoff run. Ironically, against the Dallas Mavericks, who had won 67 games that year, right? Yeah, they won 67 games that year. And got their butts kicked by the Golden State Warriors, which I was pulling for the Golden State Warriors. Yes, I was pulling for the Golden State Warriors. And they pulled it off. Yeah, they pulled it off. Yeah, so who did Don Nelson? Great coaching career. He is up in heaven right now. Okay. So I saw this article. Just scrolling through my phone. Okay. And I saw this article. I saw a story by Basketball Network, which they probably may be watching my videos. Probably not, but no. I'm just messing with you. Anyway, I saw an article by Basketball Network. And the title was Charles Barkley's honest take on Philadelphia in the 91-92 season. We're not good enough to win a championship. And how right he was. Okay. So I researched, pulled up some things. Okay. I pulled up some things. Here we go. Okay. And I looked at that roster that Barkley said wasn't good enough to win a championship. Okay. Here's the roster that they had: Ron Anderson, Michael Ansley. Of course, Barkley was there. Manute Bol, Johnny Dawkins, Armand Gilliam, Greg Grant, Hersey Hawkins, Dave Hopen, Thyron Mays, Ryan Oliver, Kenny Payne, Jeff Rulin, Charles Shackelford, Mitchell Wiggins, and Jason Williams. New Jersey Nets, Jason Williams, who started his career in Philadelphia. Okay. So, yeah, that doesn't sound like a championship roster to me. And probably didn't sound like a championship roster to Barkley either, because he said it, and because he said it. And okay, so the trouble started for the 76ers on opening night, when they lost 110-90 to the Chicago Bulls. They lost 110-90 to the Chicago Bulls. Okay.
We did the previous year. If the Bulls felt any pressure, they didn't show it. They played from the start as if their storybook season of a year ago had never ended. Reeling off 14 wins in their first...
Yep. The trouble started on opening night. They lost 110-90 to the Chicago Bulls, and that was pretty much it. That was a sign right there that this ain't gonna be good this season. And it wasn't, because they finished 35-47 that year, and they ended the season losing 16 of their final 22 games that year. Ugh. Some spit. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, but they ended the year losing 16 of their final 22 games. Okay, and they were out of the playoff race pretty much the whole year. But So Barkley talks about the 91-92 Sixers, okay? When a player is when the player is the face of a franchise and in the middle of his all-NBA prime, fans expect him to project confidence, stand firmly behind his team, and publicly believe that a championship is always in reach regardless of the roster shortcomings. Sir Charles, however, was not one of those. Sir Charles, however, was never one to offer false hope simply for the sake of appearances. Although the round mound of rebound gave everything he had to the Philadelphia 76ers every time he stepped on the court, his final years with the franchise left him increasingly frustrated. Before the 91-92 season had even begun, he openly admitted that while he would continue carrying the team on his shoulders, the Sixers simply were not built to compete for an NBA championship. Remember what I talked about in the video a couple of weeks back? The Sixers blowing their whole future in the 1986 draft? We're going to win 45 to 50 games, but that's not our goal. Are we going to have a good team? Yes, the 11-time All-Star confidently said. But are we good enough to win a championship? I don't think so. Things look very different when Barkley first entered the league in '84. As a rookie, he joined a veteran roster loaded with Dr. J, Maurice Cheeks, Moses Malone, and Andrew Toney. The group immediately showed its potential by reaching the Eastern Conference Finals, giving Chuck an early glimpse of what a legitimate contender looked like. Unfortunately, the team's trajectory soon changed. In Barkley's sophomore year, he established himself as an All-NBA second-team player, averaging 20 points per game. Philly even came close to reaching the conference finals as they ultimately lost in 7 games to the Milwaukee Bucks. The time the Milwaukee Bucks broke through versus the Philadelphia 76ers. In the second round, but from there, the decline was steady. However, once veterans like Malone were traded, Dr. J entered the last stretch of his career. The roster Barkley eventually called out failed to keep the pace. As a result, they failed to make it out of the second round consistently. Barkley individually had reached another level, as evidenced by 4 straight All-NBA first-team nods from 87-88 to 90-91. Yet the 76ers got humbled, including twice at the hands of the Bulls. After enduring those disappointments year after year, Barkley appeared to lose faith that the franchise was capable of taking the next step. Thus, by the time the 1991-92 season arrived, he seemed convinced that history would simply repeat itself, and his fears ultimately proved justified. Barkley averaged 23.1 points per game and earned a place in the All-NBA second team. But since none of his other teammates even averaged 20, the team clearly lacked firepower. Thus, they logged merely 35 wins in that campaign and missed out on the playoffs altogether. Might I add that the 76ers had released Rick Mahorn after the 1991 season, okay? So that was big too. At least Barkley had the clarity of how things would unravel even before the season started. He was right about them not contending for a championship, but he was wrong about Philly being a good team, as his prediction of winning 45 to 50 games didn't come close to happening. Also, even though Sixers' potential was never a championship level in 1992, who knows if he didn't sound so demotivating. Maybe he could have extracted more from his teammates that season. Okay. So, let me go back. Let me read that last part again. If he didn't sound so demotivating, maybe he could have extracted more from his teammates that season. Okay. So, do you think he could have extracted more from Ron Anderson, Michael Ansley, Manute Bol, Johnny Dawkins coming off a knee injury. Armand Gilliam, Greg Grant, Hersey Hawkins, Dave Hopin, Thyron Mays, Brian Oliver, Kenny Payne, Jeff Rulin, Charles Hackelford, Mitchell Wiggins, Jason Williams. And he probably could have extracted more from his teammates, but who knows, okay? Who knows? But I'm looking at that roster. That roster probably would have barely made the playoffs and probably would have got swept out of the first round of the Bulls that year. Anyways, so yeah, yeah. I'm just looking at this roster, and I'm not sure Charles Barkley could have extracted more if he did not say what he said. So, yeah. All right, that's it. And that's all for Throwing It Back with Sean Farrell. I am out of here, and God bless you all.